In this video, we're going to look at how do we calculate the centroid of a composite section. So what does that mean? Well, in the past, we've seen that if we can define a shape by a function, we can use integrals to calculate the centroid of that particular shape. But in most cases, the shapes are simple enough that we can break them down in individual smaller shapes or more simpler shapes, and we can calculate the centroid of those of the composite section based on the centroid of those other smaller or more simple shapes. So let me show you what I mean in a figure. Let's say that we are interested in calculating the centroid of something like this. You might see something like this. For example, when you're looking at a structural element, and this is a little bit more of an exaggeration of it, but in a structural element, if you look at a bridge, in some cases they have some shapes that are similar to that, not quite as exaggerated as this one. But if we look at this particular shape, what we can do is we can break it down in three different shapes, right? We can have one shape over here. Right, we can call this shape number 1. And we can have another shape right here. That's shape number 2. And we can have another shape, let's use yellow for that one. That would be shape number 3, somewhere in here. So if I have a particular axis, let's say we have some axis somewhere in here, and we're interested in calculating the centroid of that whole shape with respect to this axis, I can actually use the fact that I know that the other shapes, shape number 1, number 2, and number 3, are rectangles, and I know that the centroid of those particular shapes is going to be smack in the middle of those rectangles, right? So that's what we mean with our composite section. So this section can be broken down in simpler sections, which we know where the centroid is. So again, we put a title to this. So in this video, we're going to look at centroids of composite sections. Very good. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is, we need to know the centroid of simpler shapes. And so what I want you to do is go to the internet, open another browser, or and try to Google centroid tables. And what you're going to find is you're going to find some tables that have some shapes, and it's going to show you where is the centroid of those shapes based on a particular coordinate system. So I'll give you a second, and you can do that. Okay, so some of you might have found already some of those tables. I found one myself, and for example, I found the centroid table. I found one, let's say that is something like this. And this might look familiar. Have you seen the video that I did before this one? If this is B, and this is H, center is somewhere in here. And it says that is at my x bar is 2b/3. My y bar is h/3. Right? So that might sound familiar too if you look at the video that I did before. What else do we have? Let me turn my camera off so we can have a little more space. What other shapes do we have? Let me see. Let me look back. Okay, what about this one? So we have another shape that we have that is a common shape is a fourth of a circle. So that might not look like a circle, but let's make the assumption that looks like a fourth of a circle, right? And if this is my shape of interest, my centroid is going to be somewhere over here. And this says that my x bar, sometimes the table is going to say x or xc, is 4r/3 pi. And my y bar is going to be the same thing, 4r/3 pi, right? What else do I see? I see, okay, so the other one that is common, and for that one we might not need a lot of math to be able to solve it. If we have a rectangle, this is my base, and this is my height. This is going to be at x bar is b/2. My y bar is h/2, which makes sense, right? Because that is going to be the geometric center of that shape. All right, so that's one thing that you might want to consider when we're looking at these centroids with composite areas. The other thing that you might want to look at is, okay, so now let's say that we know what is the centroid of those areas. Now, how do I calculate the center of the composite area, right? And again, I'm not trying to do an example. I'm just going to show you the concept, and then we're going to see another video later when we look at an example. But what you want to do is you want to create a little table. In that table, you're going to organize it by each of the rows is going to be a shape. And in the columns, you're going to put different information about those shapes. And by completing that table, you're going to be able to find the centroid of your composite section. So what does that table have? Well, the table is going to be looking something like this. We have a section. 1, 2, and 3. And let's say that those 3 might say correspond to the 3 areas that we have up here, right? The red one, the blue one, and the yellow one, let's say. Then we're going to have my area. And you can put some units to that value of the area, right? I don't know what units. I'm going to have my x bar for my area. So that's for my particular section 1, 2, or 3, right? With some units, depending on the problem. My y bar with the right units, right? And then we're going to have my area times my xi, and then my area times my yi. All right, so that's basically taking the first 2 columns, multiplying them. That'll give you the 4th column, and the area times the y bar gives you your last column. So that should be bar and bar. All right, and then we're going to do totals. And we're going to need the total of my area. So it's going to sum of my areas. Okay, that's my area I. And here we're going to have the sum of my areas times xi and the sum of my areas times yi. Right? So my centroid, this is centroid. Okay, so my centroid, my composite section, right? So for composite section, we have what? Well, we have that my x bar is going to be the sum of my areas, and that should be AI, okay? Forgot that AI times xi bar or my total area. And the same thing for my y bar. My y bar is going to be the sum of my AI yi bar times the sum of my AIs. That's it. So in a nutshell, what you want to do is you want to break down that area of that composite section in smaller areas. You want to locate the centroid of each of those areas, and then at the end you want to complete that table and do that equation that we saw at the end. So that is going to be this equation. My x bar is equal to the sum of the AI's xi bars over the sum of all of the areas. My y bar is the sum of their AI yi bar over the sum of all of the areas. Now, one caveat here. Remember that those xi and yi are the ones with respect to the axis of the composite section, right? So it has to be with respect to these axes x and y that are shown in there, right? So with respect to these axes, x and y. The ones that you might be given on those tables might be different axes. So you want to make sure to be able to interpret those values of those tables to be represented on those axes. And I think that might be more clear once you see an example in a following up video.